Welcome to a podcast that I think is going to be epic. I just have a feeling you're in a mood today. That man right there is. I think we have some fun things to talk about. You know, in life, I always say this to my kids every day. Well, almost every day. I said, I make them answer me back. And they already know the answer, but I make them answer me. I said, hey, what day is it today? And they roll their eyes, and especially my daughter, she's 16. And she goes, it's the best day I could ever live. I said, yeah, why is that? Because it's the one I'm living. Like, absolutely, babe.
Yeah.
Right? But this is the best day we can live. This is the best day we can do a podcast because this is what we've got.
Yeah.
We don't have tomorrow, and yesterday already happened.
I get everybody does, right? How are you doing today? How's it going today?
Yeah, you're like,
well, so a new one that I've learned, and I don't think it's anything new, and I wish I could cite the source of where I learned it from, but my standard response now is I'm trying to say better than I deserve.
better than I deserve.
How's it going today? How are you doing today? Oh, better than I deserve.
That's not bad.
Well, I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
It's just true.
It is.
I mean, I'm a type 1 diabetic in a family riddled with cancer. I'm definitely
Boom.
I'm
On the
definitely
up.
doing
Yeah.
better than
You're
I
riding
deserve.
high.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I own a barbecue restaurant that people seemingly hate online. And that might be part of why I'm in a mood today, but it's
Well,
it's not even upset. It's actually more entertaining, and it's part of the larger narrative. And we were talking earlier about, this whole thing. It's just I've never seen people simp for government the way that they are. And I'm not saying on one side or the other. I'm actually saying on both sides, right?
Yeah.
The Trump derangement syndrome,
Yeah.
TDS, as a lot
Yeah.
of people call it. That's a real thing.
like he's our savior.
But then you go back and you look before that, and there was probably an Obama derangement
100.
syndrome.
Yes.
Right. I mean, with the birth certificate stuff, whatever. But, here in Michigan, Whitmer, so I shared a repost, I guess is what we call it.
Yeah, you got to
on
put
X
that
now.
up. Put that up when we go into editing.
I will actually. And it was a stan account for Whitmer,
Yeah.
for the Democrats.
Yeah, you showed it to me.
And it was basically a meme of Whitmer, a Maoist meme, right?
Right. The Chinese dictator.
Yes, Chinese dictator Mao.
But it's Whitmer in place of that.
It's Whitmer in place, and the whole thing, and there was no context given to it. Simply, they just posted this meme, I guess, if you could even call it that. And some of the ensuing comments were kind of interesting. People were actually like, "Oh, I wish you were that cool." Only if yada yada. And of course, there's people like, yeah, well, no kidding, she's definitely a dictator in all facets of the word.
Sure.
So of course, being who I am, I share that, and I'm saying, it seems pretty accurate.
That was your comment.
That was my comment when I reposted. It used to be a retweet. Now it's a repost on Twitter, X, Twix, whatever you want to call it.
Twix. I like that. I haven't heard of Twix. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and then of course, what I call the hurting ensues. These people that cannot fathom somebody saying or thinking something badly about their government official or their queen, as we kind of jokingly call her. But I've never quite seen such, I don't even know the word to call it, but it's just this weird thing that people want to hold up this stranger.
Yeah.
It's a weird fascination between celebrity and politics. And I think it's almost more into the celebrity side now. I mean, we definitely saw that with Trump. I mean, the celebrity apprentice. He was Ronald Reagan was a celebrity before he became president.
Yeah.
Now, I'm certainly not trying to compare the two. The difference being with Reagan is that he was actually in government before he became president.
Sure.
Trump wasn't. But it's almost a mental condition, and I don't want to be flippant when I say that, but it's strange the amount of time that people take to bolster their opinion and the worldview of a given politician. So in this context with Whitmer, and then taking it even further with when Whitmer's out of office, there is now talk of Jocelyn Benson our Secretary of
Wow.
State, is showing some early signs of wanting to fill that role. So I think that's kind of the
It'd
next
just be a
thing.
progression.
Yeah, I think that's the next thing coming down the line. And listen, Benson, she's not been the target of many of my discussions.
Hmm.
I do know of some court cases that she has lost when it comes to some of the emergency orders that were implemented at polling stations during the pandemic. One of the big ones was not allowing guns.
Yeah.
So she is definitely not infallible, and she's got some real issues that are hanging around her neck as far as election integrity and some other things. But I just find it so weird that these people spend so much time. We know Twitter is a gross place, right? It's not the real world by any means. And there are several anonymous accounts. I mean, almost all of them seem like they're anonymous accounts, and they're just mean.
Yeah.
And that's what they try and draw out, like the worst in people, and play these games. And I partake in them in such a way that is a further narrative on what the Iron Pig has gone through, and talking about online reviews, and people will get together.
What's your current Yelp review rating?
I think our Yelp is like down to 3.5, and they almost all, I mean, there's no middle ground. That's the funniest.
It's either
thing.
5 or 1.
It's either
5 or 1.
There's
5 or 1.
There's no middle ground whatsoever. Which speaks volumes about the entire process of peer reviewing.
Yeah.
But I say if anybody wants a really good idea of actually what's happened, verified reviews like a DoorDash are a better spot to go with that kind of thing.
Sure. Because those are people actually getting your food and basing it off what they're eating.
You're required to make a purchase in order to do so. We've had people as far away as Alaska leave us reviews, and they'll tell us, I've never once been to your restaurant, but I read something online, and I can't believe somebody would do business like this. And to me, as crazy and as opposite as it sounds, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not afraid to say, take a hike.
So here's a question. So this is a good question, because I think people actually genuinely have this question about you specifically, right? It seems like you enjoy poking the bear. You enjoy continuing to stir up certain levels of controversy, even to somebody may even say like he kind of likes it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain level of truth to that for sure. And it serves a couple of different purposes.
Yeah.
And one of the main
and we didn't even talk about this before I asked you that question, but it's something that I know I hear people ask me, because I tell them like, oh yeah, I'm good buds with Ian. They look at me, they're like, you're good friends with Ian Murphy? I'm like, yeah. I go, I don't agree with everything he does, and we're very different people, but I respect something about him, and he's been a true friend. That's hard to find.
I learned years ago. There's an old saying: "He doesn't suffer fools lightly." And that's I have that malady. I don't suffer fools lightly. For a long time, my friends growing up in high school will tell you the exact same thing.
Sure, that's who you are.
Especially, I played soccer in high school, and I was a referee's nightmare. I was probably a coach's nightmare too. Constantly questioning authority. Fast forward to today, here I am still questioning, suing local government, suing state government.
Yeah.
But in the context of the last 3 years, and how, listen, people left us snarky reviews since we've opened. I've always said this, barbecue is very, very subjective, right? So it opens a door for a lot of things. And you don't have to love our food, but, at least have some appreciation for the hard work that our crew does do.
Sure.
Right? Don't be disrespectful, those kinds of things. Normal human behavior, right? When dining out is sort of expected.
Yep.
We've seen a real decline in that for a lot of reasons, right? The pandemic accelerated that for a lot of reasons. The virtue signaling is really what started to ramp up. And that to me is the bigger part of it. It's this idea that I am better than you because of my opinion or my beliefs or my principles, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And those generally are the same people that pride themselves on their high level of tolerance.
Got it.
So I find it wildly hypocritical. And that's where the entertainment value comes in for me.
Because you like to,
A lot of times,
you like to expose that.
and this is flippant when I say this, a lot of times these are therapy sessions for these people.
Sure.
Because they have no idea how hypocritical they sound.
Because they can't.
For
think through it that way.
example, when they say that they are pro-choice when it comes to the big issue of abortion, but when it comes to making medical decisions, they are not pro-choice. You have to go by what that government official says, local, state, right? So I mean, this is the hypocrisy
Yep.
that has been on display for
Yeah.
so long.
Wow, that's such a great point. It's such a great
Paired
point.
with the virtue signaling that I'm better than you, that I'm protecting my community, as it were, in the pandemic's case, with a mask or with a vaccine or with a this, or by leaving a review or sharing something and saying, look at what these disgusting people are doing. They're putting our community at risk. So when we have people locally that say that kind of thing, A, they don't know me.
Right.
B, they probably never spent even remotely any time here or with any of our crew.
So they have no authority.
And they really don't understand exactly what's going on. There are plenty of people that think by me responding to a 1-star review in the manner that I do is bad business. And I understand that. Because traditionally, that is exactly, the customer is always right.
But in this case,
but the pandemic changed that.
So you would have people leave reviews often without ever stepping foot into your restaurant.
Oh, all the time. All the time. The majority of our bad reviews, and of course, anybody that's listening to this is probably going to say, well, of course he's going to say that. The majority of our reviews, especially the ones that mention me or
personally,
or the owner,
or
look at how he responds to reviews online.
Yeah.
Those are people that have never been
here
to the pig. Absolutely. Have never met any of our amazing staff, have never come in here and experienced the atmosphere and the fun things that happen here. And it's so, I always say, I'm an easy villain. And I'll play that role. Because part of it is drawing them out and drawing that hypocrisy out. But listen, we're all virtue signalers.
We all are.
Right? We all are, right? And pride has a lot to do with it. And as men, we understand pride.
Yes.
You know, I get it. But when people pride themselves on being ultra tolerant and then cannot understand individual liberty and individual choice making.
It doesn't make any sense.
When I'm not forcing anybody, I never forced anyone to come into the restaurant. I never forced any of my crew to work. They voluntarily came to work during the pandemic. Customers voluntarily came through the door in droves.
People wanted to.
In droves.
I want to let me make a point on that. Because somebody might be listening to this and just heated right now because they're so mad. The people that came, which it was a lot, and I know it might be so hard for somebody to understand this, but it was truly for them the greatest blessing you could give to them. Does that make sense? Because
I have the letters to prove that.
Because all of a sudden there was a place that was safe. Where if you didn't have your mask on, you weren't going to get yelled at, right? That you actually could go and sit down kind of close to somebody.
Yeah.
That we have to remember that wasn't a thing.
Right. Yeah.
I remember walking through the grocery store without my mask on thinking everybody hates me right now. And I'm like, wait a second. Okay. It's 2 months removed from when this
I think that's flipped now, but.
It is, which I don't think is right for the other side. Like, I don't think either is right.
Leave it alone.
Just, it is like if somebody wants to do it, they want to do it.
Yeah, one of my bankers wears a mask. I don't care.
No,
and I was talking to one of the other breakout. And I was talking to one of the other bankers. I'm like, do you hear? Is anybody giving her shit? And she's like, yeah, actually, I do hear some people giving her shit from time to time. I'm like, you know what? That's just stupid.
It is.
Because you're
So
no better
you
than the
have to be
people that were saying
consistent.
it
You
before.
have to be
Yes,
consistent,
yes.
or you're just on a side.
Yeah.
It's no different
And
than
you're a
this is my team.
hypocrite.
This is my team, right?
Yeah.
And so I've brought this up before, but this has happened throughout millennial.
Yeah.
Okay, this has happened. You look at right now the big conflict in Israel and in the Gaza. I remember being there in 2004 and going to the Dome of the Rock, which is in Jerusalem, which right now is run by the Palestinians, right? And technically that is the temple on top of where the Jewish temple used to be. And it was right when Yasser Arafat died. So I went around and pretended I was a reporter. Okay. And I would ask the Palestinians, because I was in that quarter. Jerusalem's fascinating. It's in 4 quarters, right? And it's literally like when you go to Epcot Center, and at Epcot you go to the different countries, and you literally step across the line and you're now in France, or you step across the line, you're in Sweden. That's what it's like there. You step across and go to the next quarter. It's like, oh, this is the Muslim quarter, right? Here's the Jewish quarter. Okay. So we're in the Muslim quarter, and I'm asking all these merchant and shop owners. And the crazy part was this. I would ask them about the temple. And then I would ask them, well, what if it was proven that there was a Jewish temple here? That possibility didn't even exist in their mind. Because it was a tribe, like it's like a tribal, and you even see that now where the Jewish side is much more logical. Hey, we don't put our women and children in harm's way. I don't want to say play by the rules with how we fight, but there's a logic at least to it, right? Where from the Muslim standpoint there isn't. It's very tribal, and it's so interesting how it's so easy for society to digress to that, like inner primitive being of tribalism, right? So to your point, the person at the bank is somebody who didn't wear a mask or who only wore it occasionally, right? Now to look down on somebody for them wearing it, there's really no difference.
No, there isn't.
I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, I mean, being a mask hole goes both ways.
Both ways, it does.
It truly does.
It does.
And
it does.
And same with the vaccine.
Yes.
I mean, any of the. I mean, even the election kind of stuff. Anything. All of this stuff. It's like it just. This is why I'm glad that I'm libertarian and independent. Like I don't have to faction myself with shackle myself.
So what do you? So here's a question: what do you think of RFK Jr.?
I think he's gotten some baggage behind him. I think he's an interesting candidate.
Yeah.
I am more interested to see how that independent candidacy, if he hooks up with Tulsi, that could be interesting. I worry about his ability to govern. But I'm more interested in a larger electoral picture. Yeah. Because what happens if nobody gets to 272 or whatever the number is,
magic number.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm curious, because that may be what breaks the wheel of this two-party system.
Wouldn't it be incredible if that happened?
Even if he doesn't win.
That's exactly it. He probably won't.
Right? The closest we've seen was Ross Perot.
Dude.
90.
Texas Instruments. Yeah. Remember the big graphing calculators?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Those are amazing.
Right.
And now I just saw in the news today, Fauci comes out and says social distancing. What was the exact phrase it was like social distancing we knew didn't work, it just kind of appeared.
Yeah,
that was his exact quote.
Right. It just sort
think
of
about
appeared.
that.
Right.
It
just
just
like
appeared.
The executive orders just magically appeared
because we're following the science. It just appeared. So what I don't get is this. How can people see that no matter what side they're on and go, oh, I'm going to continue to vote for that? Like, forget being mad at it. Okay, let's forget the...
You already said it. You said the answer to it already.
Forget the...
Tribalism.
Forget the criminal part of this whole thing, right? There is so many lawsuits that should be happening and completely obliterate, everything. It was so bad, right? Think of everything everybody had to do.
Yeah.
we were forced to do. That now it's like, oh, yeah, it just kind of appeared.
The stickers on the floor telling you what direction to walk down the aisle while you're at the grocery store.
Dude, it was
didn't have any capacity limits on it. And, I mean, it's just most of us.
What the whole thing did?
Most of us knew. I knew.
And we all forget about it because we want to go back to normalcy. Like we don't want to remember it because you don't like to remember bad things.
I get blasted for that all the time, especially this time.
Yeah, why do you keep bringing it up?
Because I'm resharing and I'm reminding.
And
it's coming into an election year, a big election, and of course I'm going to remind. And people want to jump. Oh, why you bring? Oh, look at you! You're still upset. You're still hurt. It's
like, there's something here though. Think about this. There's something here because psychologically, here's what happens. Everybody has gone through really hard stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody does. Everybody's story has tragedy, right? Everybody's story has pain and suffering, and you have to make it through something. Like that's the human condition.
Right.
Okay. However, it's really interesting. Like we as humans, varying degrees of personalities though, we are built in such a way for survival, okay? Even mentally, okay? So because we're built for survival, and from my standpoint, I believe God made us that way, we tend to select memories that are positive for us to build our story, our self-identity out of.
Yeah.
And the ones that are hard, even for good reason, we tend to try to actually not remember as much, okay? So it is naturally in us to want to let that go away.
Right.
Because it's almost like it's actually unbelievable. So what we had to be and do is actually unbelievable. So we actually don't want to believe it happened. And since it did happen and we all did it, and to some extent we all like followed along for a little bit. It's like, I don't want to know. It's like that bad relationship you were in. You're like, how did I ever nope. And you just blank it.
And I'll tell you,
blank it out of your mind.
There's a dichotomy at work when you're talking about that exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
So just this last week was the 3-year anniversary of our very first Freedom Festival that we had.
So good.
Over at Bell Iron Grill.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what I shared on
oh my gosh.
On Facebook and Twitter was the video of Neshama playing. Neshama, amazing, by the way.
That was magical.
It
was, dude.
So that's my point, right? So you're talking about a negative memory versus a positive memory, right? And the majority of that time for most people was negative memory. I couldn't do this. I couldn't see my family. If I had somebody sick or a family member died from COVID, a lot of negative things were going on, right? I lost my job, this, that, and the other. Contrast that with that event that I was sharing will never again be duplicated, and is such a positive in a time of such negative. And I think that bothers these people too, because we dared, if you will, to live freely and to join with almost 500 other people and put together an event outside for us to congregate
in the middle of winter.
Together in the middle of winter. It was cold.
I don't know how he played that fiddle with oh my gosh.
But
so
it's interesting to think about that when we want to suppress those negative memories. But the reason why I'm sharing some of these things is because they were so positive. And yes, there's plenty of negative, the court dates, the administrative hearings and all that crap, having our liquor license suspended, all those things. But in totality, those events shape the character of our business and what we stand for and stand on till this day. And that really bothers people.
Well, it cauterized a vision for you. It cauterized a vision of really an identity of who you are. And I think it's so important. So obviously from my end, and you and I, it's fun when we get to talk because my background is a very spiritual background, right? And I tend not to use the word religious because I've always actually pushed back against organized religion, but fully embraced spirituality with unashamedly Jesus. Like I threw a party for 15 years in a row. That was one of the biggest celebrations of God.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. We want to get people together to celebrate. And so I love that. I will tell you this, when we put on that Freedom Festival, aside from maybe Dean getting on stage and dropping the F-bomb like 5 times at the end there, it was probably one of the best times of worship. Okay. And I'll define worship in a second, that I've ever been a part of. And when I call worship, here's what worship is. Worship is when people get together in celebration and you're experiencing actual life together. Because for me, the author of life is God. And so when we experience life and embrace it, enjoy it, and celebrate it, there's actually this perfect offering we're giving to our Creator when we do something like that. It's actually one of the most pure forms of living. It's something I think in our own spirituality here in the Western version of Christianity actually doesn't get very well. You kind of have to go over to Israel or go over to other places to really understand what true celebration is. Okay. Like the Messianic Jews, those guys know how to celebrate. Like every Friday, Sabbath isn't like the day you don't work. Sabbath is a big party. Like you're always invited to somebody's house and you're celebrating, right? Every single week you have to celebrate, no matter what the circumstance. Why? Because life is amazing, right? And so that, I tell you what, and I think the reason that people who went look back and like, oh my gosh, there was something so special about it that was outside of any person, right? Outside of any person. It was like, look at this. We're living right now. To me, that's what made that so beautiful. And I think tying that back now to kind of seeing these things in the news, seeing everything. Here's so when somebody asks me why I hang out with you, when you and I are very different in some ways, right? How do you measure respect? Okay, do I measure respect on how somebody speaks, or if they get mad or not, or well, I'm a more global person, so I tend to see big pictures, right? And for me, when I looked at during that time, who was willing to be humble enough and self-sacrificing enough to actually risk their livelihood, their personal reputation, put it all on the line for a principle. There's literally a handful, maybe not a handful of people I knew that would do that, right? And so for me, that's like, well, this is easy, right? This is easy. Of course I'm gonna be this dude's friend because I like admire that, right? That inspires me. No, yes, there's a lot of things I'm sure you and I disagree on. Wehowever, when you bring, it's so important we remember. It's so important we remember the things that went wrong. And we're not just sheep going to slaughter.
Yeah.
We're not just ants marching like the Dave Matthews song, right? It's so important we actually think and we have wisdom, that we pursue wisdom, that we're actually thoughtful.
Yeah.
Because without that, we're just taking up airspace.
Right.
Like literally.
That's why it amazes me that there are so many people that just want to toe that line for whatever it is, the government or anti-free speech policies, whether on social media or from the government. I've never quite seen anything like it in since the last couple of years.
No.
And I don't know that it's going to get any better, but some of these people really need to disconnect. They need to disconnect their personal lives from the political things that are going on that drive them to act so crazy and be so obsessed with these people on both sides, right? On the positive side and the negative side.
I agree with that. Yep.
Trump obviously gives a lot of fodder for people.
Sure.
So I mean, he always has.
It's part of his shtick.
And I think that's part of why it has, accelerated some of this behavior.
But it's also what made him do the things he was able to do really well.
Right.
There's some amazing things he did.
Right.
We don't always agree. And I think, too, the tribalism thing, wouldn't it be great to be able to define, I don't want to call it a movement, that seems so altruistic, but to be able to define a group of people that actually are just thoughtful, that are able to look at both sides and say, hey, I really like these things that they're doing. And I don't like these other things, but I'm okay. Like, it's okay.
Right.
It's okay not to agree with everything that you say.
Right.
And still actually respect or think they're a person and I can learn from them.
Right.
Isn't that novel?
The dynamic has really changed. So instead of focusing on, the 9 things that we have in common that
we're focusing on the one thing.
We're focusing on the 1 or 2 things.
The half a thing.
Us
yes.
That aren't even remotely important as the other 9 things that we do agree.
Yeah.
I see this a lot, and it's really disappointing to the point where I would love to create here at the restaurant a sort of high school debate style.
Wouldn't that be sweet? Dude, it's like my example, The Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to go up on The Rock and you have to share what you have to say.
In a respectful way. I'm trying to figure out how we can do this. I'm sure we'll experiment with it at some point.
Oh my gosh.
And to bring 2 sides together of a particular subject. And it doesn't have to be anything that's vitriolic. It can be something as simple, as, Spartans versus Wolverines. Well, obviously, we know who's going to win that one right now, but
shout out to Michigan.
Stafford versus Goff.
Oh, I am time out. Being a lifelong Lions fan, this couldn't be I couldn't be more excited right now.
It's cool. I think it is
so much fun.
Cool.
So much fun right now.
What's interesting is this would not have happened if Brad Allen made the correct call and Detroit would have had the number 1 seed in the bye.
Which is just crazy.
So Staff wouldn't be coming back to Detroit. We wouldn't have, there are bars that are banning Stafford jerseys in Detroit. Like, I love it. Spirit of Detroit's got a Lions jersey on right now. I mean, it's cool. And they deserve it. I can't even say we, because Detroit, it's awesome.
It's
right.
So
we haven't had
cool.
a good sports team. The Lions have not been good in a long time. So, I mean, they set some records this year, and it's going to be fun to watch. The Wolverines, crushed it.
And both the coaches, Harbaugh and Campbell, they're like the coolest.
They're homegrown dudes.
They're so much fun to watch.
I mean, it is fun.
It is so much fun to watch.
And come back.
What team is it really the coach as the focal point rather than some star player?
Right.
That's the cool thing about both these teams.
Yep.
Really, both are built from just solid leaders as coaches. I've actually learned so much from Dan Campbell's press conferences.
LeBron James doesn't know such a thing.
No, because LeBron James, it's hard to be his coach.
Right.
Yeah. I think that embodies what Michigan actually is all about. We are kind of that Midwest, hardworking. Yeah. At least I feel like I want to think that's what it's all about. I want to be like that.
Yeah. And see, this is the fun part where if for a time people can shut up about the things that divide us.
I know.
And
I know.
Come together. I mean, even Sparty fans were cheering on the Wolverines.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, of course, we're all Michiganians.
Yeah.
I think that word Michiganders.
We got to come up with a better word.
But that's my hope for the future. And I would love to create an atmosphere where we could come together here in a restaurant and be able to do that kind of thing. So
I got to get going.
You got to go.
I got to pick up a kid.
Perfect.
Look how the real talk on our podcast. All right.
Right.
Hey, brother.
Love you, man.
Always great, man.
Thanks for tuning in with us again. Always, we appreciate it. Fuelcast TV is where you can catch all these fun episodes about Drew and I just shooting the breeze here. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Real quick before I go, we do have a 3-part series coming up about individuals that are suing a private company for something they read on Facebook. Can you imagine that?
Can't imagine.
Getting your feelings hurt from something you read on Facebook and suing. Fuelcasttv.com is where you're going to find that 3-part series.
Hey, have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.